back, relax, and maybe get yourself a snack. Me and you gonna have a little chat about books. Hey guys! So I'm here today to review two books that I recently read, both of which are fantasy and both of which coincidentally are published by Orbit, so I thought I'd do them in a joint review. The books I have to review for you today are Blood of Assassins, which is by R.J. Barker. This is the sequel to Age of Assassins, which I recently read and really enjoyed and reviewed, so I'll put my link to my review for that one if you want to go and find out a bit about the first book. And then the other book that I'm going to be talking about is this one, Senlin Ascends by Josiah Bancroft, which is the first one in a new series that I just recently started. So I'm going to start off with Senlin Ascends because it is the first one in the series. So this book I was actually really excited to get to because, as you guys know, I've been participating in the SBFBO and I knew that this was a previous entry into the SBFBO. It didn't win, but it was a really well deserving entry and a lot of people said it was great and deserved to win and people really enjoyed it. And in fact, Mark Lawrence, who runs the SBFBO, was a big endorser of this book. He's got a quote on the front and he's been really great about publicising this book and just generally making loads and loads of hype about this series. So because of all of that, I was obviously expecting good things going into this. I had high hopes and I definitely wasn't disappointed, which is great. I was sent this for review from the publisher. I requested it because it just sounded like my kind of thing. This story focuses on a couple called Maria and Thomas, and they just recently got married. They're going on their honeymoon and they decide that they're going to go to the Tower of Babel for their honeymoon. Senlin, Thomas Senlin, is our main character. He is a headmaster who teaches all about the Tower of Babel back at the school where he works. He has been fascinated by its engineering and its ingenuity for his whole life, but he's never actually visited it before. He's just read pretty much everything you can buy on the subject of the tower, and he knows or feels like he knows an awful lot about it. So he is fascinated and awed by this tower, which is why he is dragging his wife along to the tower in order to have hopefully a really relaxing, lovely honeymoon there. They've heard that the third level of the tower has baths and that's like a really nice place for newlyweds to kind of spend their time together and just enjoy it. So they're hoping it's going to be great. But it's not so great when they actually get there, and it turns out that when they do arrive, things quickly start going wrong and everything goes astray from the plan. Thomas Senlin is exactly the sort of character you would expect from a headmaster. He is finicky, he is very detail oriented, he loves to follow the rules, and he is not a normal hero or a typical hero by any means. He's quite a clueless young fellow, unfortunately, and this does lead them into some trouble quite early on in the marketplace when they get separated. The rest of the book follows Thomas Senlin as he decides he needs to go into the tower to try and find his wife who has gone missing, and we follow him through the various levels of the tower, seeing what happens on each one. I'm talking about the tower as though you guys know, and actually in the beginning of the book there is different levels of the tower, so you can see that we have the basement, the parlour, there's the skirts, which is kind of the marketplace, and the market out here, and then the baths, New Babel, Pelphia and the Silk Garden. So those are all the levels that we can see. It's kind of a mysterious tower because no one quite knows exactly how many levels there are. No one exactly knows what goes on every level. But Senlin feels qualified and he just wants to have a nice time with his wife. So they go there, they get separated, and then he realizes that everything he's read may not be quite true. And what I really liked about this book was that Thomas Senlin is just completely the most unimaginable hero. He doesn't embody a hero at all, and yet he manages to stumble his way through, and I mean stumble literally, through this tower and tries to just find his wife. He's very dedicated to her. So the main thing I really liked about this was the character of Thomas Senlin himself, because he is quite a character. He comes out with some great moments and lines in the book, and I really enjoyed him and kind of developing our enjoyment of him and our understanding of him throughout the time, where we get a few flashbacks and we get him going through the tower and seeing how he navigates the completely bizarre wilderness that is the Tower of Babel. And then we also have just the tower itself. It is completely engineered. It has some really interesting behind the scenes to it. There's a lot that happens in this that kind of reminded me a little bit of the Otherland series by Tad Williams. It definitely has echoes of that, and I really enjoyed the Other Land series. It's one of my all-time favourite series. You can see it just down here behind me, and I love that series. So when I was reading this and I was getting similar vibes, it was great and I was loving it. It's kind of like each level of the tower that you go to is kind of an almost completely different world. There's different worlds of people, like different classes of people. There are some people who are just completely bizarre and witty and funny and mad, and they're really entertaining characters. And then we have characters that Thomas Senlin befriends who are genuine and caring and really just want to help him and succeed. And then we have characters who are definitely not up for him succeeding and want to try and stop him at all costs. He gets involved in some pretty nasty business later on in the book, and it all goes a little bit pear-shaped, even more than it already has. So overall, this was definitely a fun one. It is a slow start, so that's why I took off one of the stars. It is quite a slow build-up, but I think that really works. It feels a little bit like a kind of timeless classic, even though it's fairly new. On the whole, I really enjoyed this and I'd certainly recommend it. It does have a few sort of steampunk elements later on as well, which was really cool. And the second book is I think out already or just coming out in March really soon. It's called Armored the Sphinx, and I'm currently reading that one and really enjoying that one too. So definitely can't wait to see what happens in the end of the series. But I ended up giving this one a solid 4 stars, and I would thoroughly recommend it if you guys are interested. If anything that I've said sounds appealing, do go and pick this one up and give it a try. The next book I have to talk about is Blood of Assassins by R.J. Barker. This is a sequel, so if you want to know about the first book, then you can go and check out my review of that one. But the events of this one pick up actually about 5 years after the ending of book 1, and we are still following our main 2 characters, Girton Clubfoot and Merila Khan, who is his master, and he is in training to become an assassin. He has been travelling the kind of wilderness outside of the kingdom where we spent most of our time in book 1. He's been travelling around with his master, kind of learning the trade and basically trying to understand the world at large a little bit more. They have been doing everything in their power to stay away from the kingdom where they are known and keep everything about their present situation quite hush-hush. They don't really want to get recognised, they don't really want to be involved with people from their past because they left a rather messy situation behind them. However, as we go through the story and quite early on, we see the 2 of them get attacked, and Girton's master takes an injury that is quite severe, so he has to take her back to friends and hope that she can be saved. And in order to do this, he heads back to the kingdom that we know from the first book and meets some of the old people that we know from book 1 as well. So that's kind of where the story really takes off and gets going. And what I really like about this book and this series is the way that it's written. It's very forthright, it's very upfront and raw and honest, and Girton Clubfoot is pretty much that too. He's a character who is very much wearing his heart on his sleeve most of the time. Even as an assassin, he's quite a honest assassin. He's someone who doesn't really enjoy lying too much unless he has to, and particularly doesn't enjoy lying to friends of his. However, there are some things in this book that mean it does make it necessary for him to lie, and he has a lot of trouble kind of concealing these things effectively. And in the ending of this book, indeed, there is a moment where all could be lost. But it was very exciting and I really enjoyed it. Again, I feel like this book started off a little bit slower than it finished, and the second half was definitely my favourite part because that's where the real action of the story takes place. We're following Girton as he goes back, and because his master is incapacitated, he has to kind of take over her role, and we follow a kingdom which is in disarray, at war, and he is kind of in the middle of it all, at the forefront, and has to try and investigate whether there is a traitor in the midst. We're following him as he's trying to uncover this, but he also has his own grudges and grievances that he's dealing with from people from his past, and also new people coming into the war camp who have a grudge against him for some reason. We do see a fair bit more of the magic in this one than we did in the first book. The first book actually didn't contain an awful lot of magic at all, and this one doesn't have a huge amount more, but it definitely goes into a little bit more detail on some of it. I think that's the only reason that this didn't get a 5 stars, is because I'm still completely like wondering about the magic. I want to know more, and you don't get a lot explained in this compared to what I want. It's still more than you had originally, but it leaves a lot open, and I really want to know what's going to happen and how it all works. So I hope that in the final book that is what we get and we kind of see a bit more. Overall, again, this was a sequel that I really enjoyed. Often you get to the point where you're in the series and you're reading the second or third book and it's just not as good. That's not the case with this one. I really loved this, and I ended up giving this a solid 4.5 out of 5 stars. It was just really, really good, and certainly a series that I thoroughly intend to continue on with, especially since the third one I think comes out late this year or early next year, so not too far off. I'd love to hear your thoughts on both of these books, so do tell me if you're going to read either of them or if you've read them. Thank you all so much for watching, and I'll see you very soon in my next video. Bye guys!
Thank you for watching my video today. Go pick up a book, then come back and chat with me again.